Good afternoon and welcome, folks, to this, the 8th session of our series, Catalyst for Change. I'm John Jacobs, your moderator and host for this session for the series. We have a really outstanding panel today with a really cutting-edge topic, and one I think that the innovation economy, the innovating companies, large corporations, small, mid-size, are really going to learn a lot from. So we have some great panelists. I'll take you through, as I do with these sessions, a quick some bullet points for common data points. And so I'll just do that now. I'll share that screen and we'll come back out and I'll introduce our panel. So just give me a sec to maneuver here to the magic of my technical abilities, which are not necessarily magical. Great. So just to level set, this is Catalyst for Change. This particular episode is entitled Agile Innovation: How Building Momentum Unleashes Creativity. And here are those quick stats. I'll just rattle these off. You can please read along there. US R&D, research and development spending in 2018 reached $606 billion. That's as a country. A subset of that, about 11%, historically, is US government R&D spending. That year, of course, around $67 billion. These from the National Science Foundation. The DoD, Department of Defense, makes up roughly 41% of US government R&D spending. The total DoD spending in 2020 reached $80.5 billion. So that's a good number to keep in our minds. A subset of that, we're just sort of drilling down here, is US Navy R&D spending in 2020 targeted at, I believe these are actuals, $16 billion invested. Next bullet is the global ranking of countries by their innovative, not innovation, but innovative competitiveness. The United States ranks number 1. Interesting grouping behind here. This is an annual number from Draper Innovation Institute. Number 2, Singapore. 3, Hong Kong. 4, Switzerland. 5, Sweden. 6, UK. 7, Germany. 8, Denmark. 9, Canada. 10, Poland. Give Virginia its due. Virginia, according to the same source, Draper Innovation Institute, ranks as top 10 of the innovative regions within the United States. And so we have it's wonderful panel. We have Brad Halsey, CEO, co-founder of Building Momentum in Alexandria, Virginia. Ben Buskirk, Captain, U.S. Navy. He's in charge of Naval X, part of the Department of the Navy. And Jerry Sanford, Vice President, Business Development with Alexandria Economic Development Partnership, naturally located in Alexandria. I'll stop sharing with the actual folks here. Hello, panelists. Hello, how are you?
Good.
Let me just, you see that Brad is absolutely on brand and on message with his t-shirt. So there it is. Brad Halsey, CEO, founder of Building Momentum in Alexandria, Virginia. Prior to that, Brad had set up or stood up Athena Response, which is a nonprofit disaster response organization. He remains as chairman of that organization. Prior to Athena Response, he served in a variety of senior engineering roles in the private sector, and prior to that was a surface warfare officer in the U.S. Navy. Next up, we have Captain Van Buskirk. Let's see, Ben Van Buskirk. When he was with the fleet, when he was at sea, rather, he was commanding officer. This is prior to his current role as director of Naval X. He was commanding officer, and prior to that, executive officer of the world-famous Golden Falcons. That's a helicopter sea combat squadron out of Atsuki, Japan. When ashore, he served as a Secretary of Defense executive fellow at VMware in Palo Alto, California, where he worked with senior executives on business strategy and technology innovation. Prior to assuming his role as director of Naval X, Captain Van Buskirk serves as a founding member of the Strategic Warfighting Innovation Cell. And there are a bunch of little OpNav references there. I'm not going to go into that. And that's based in Washington, D.C. And Jerry Sanford, Vice President, Business Development, AEDP, Alexandria Economic Development Partnership. Jerry is a seasoned professional with nearly 3 decades of experience in economic development, public policy, public-private partnerships, community engagement, and external affairs. His economic development experience includes senior roles in a downtown central business district unit. So, hello, panelists. That's our panel. I will begin necessarily, and before I begin, let me just remind the audience, we are taking questions. So if you nav down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a bar, they'll say Q&A. Just left click on that and you can go ahead and start throwing questions at us. As we round the corner on the discussion, we'll go and look through those questions and answer those. Let me begin, if I may, with Brad Halsey. Brad, for the benefit of the audience, how would you describe the role that building momentum plays for participants in one of your programs?
Yeah, I mean, so thank you for all that. And the unleashing of innovation, I feel like I missed an opportunity to shoot fire out of my hands. So if we take a quick break, I'm going to go figure that out.
Yeah, no worries.
I mean, the building momentum experience is a little bit, it's all about making you feel uncomfortable and then maneuvering in that space. So technology is a great backdrop for that. It's because everyone, I don't care if you have a PhD in aerospace or if you didn't graduate high school, if you are given tech, whether it's programming your VCR, when VCRs existed, or if it's, uploading new firmware to your phone, it's always like off-putting to people. It's always confusing, frustrating. So for us, whenever we do our training, whenever we work with CEOs of corporations or small businesses, tech is sort of that narrative, that scene behind you that then we, do all of our training and sort of unleashing that fire of innovation that I need to do. So.
And, structurally, I feel compelled to ask, can you define what are the building blocks to innovation? You say taking people out of their comfort zones, but are there true building blocks to innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think one of the big keys, and we talk about these cornerstones of innovation here, or we talk about culture of cornerstones of culture, is you have to create a safe environment, a safe place where you can have these very candid discussions, you can have these honest discussions. So one of the things that we say is absolutely critical if you have a company that wants to solve hard problems is you need to have ample diversity. And that diversity is kind of like enrobed in a couple of very important things. You need to have people that are passionate about problem solving. That diversity of people needs to be educational, ethnic, gender, religious. They have to come from all sorts of parts of the universe to be, in this one room. And all those people need to have a voice. So it's, if they don't have a voice, then what's the point? And then the culture you need to create is that if they have a voice and they say something stupid or silly, that it's encouraging. And when someone goes and breaks something, it's encouraging. That's why we have this dumpster fire award that we give out every 2 weeks. It's an award that it's a plush. It's like a plush dumpster fire, believe it or not. I found one on Amazon. And to win it, you have to tell a story of something that you totally screwed up. It went to hell. And then you learn from it, and then you got better than you were before. So every 2 weeks on our all hands, we give out the dumpster fire award. And that's just emblematic of creating that safe space so that people can, share their failures and talk about those things.
Hearing back to the discomfort level, I remember my father used to tell me, give people the problem. If you want, if you give somebody a problem they don't expect, and you make them work with somebody else, you've just done something. So I think about the programs that you run, and just for the audience's benefit, at Building Momentum, there are programs or focus areas on 3D printing and welding and Raspberry Pi development. And my question is, are these proxies for teamwork, or are they actual key deliverables?
Right. So, when I came out of a think tank in Silicon Valley called Stanford Research Institute, where I had access to like every tool, every really cool science bench full of everything you could have. And then I went to Iraq for a year and ran around that country solving problems there. And when I came back, the Army, who was my client at the time, I was a consultant for them, were like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put 3D printers in the field. And I'm like, that sounds stupid. I hate 3D printing. Fast forward a year and a half later, we're making all sorts of crazy solutions with 3D printers. And so the reality is they're not proxies. We work with all the members of the services, all the teams, all the SEAL team guys, all these people. And the reason we've chosen these technologies that we teach is because they actually are applicable on the battlefield or in disaster zones. Everything from Arduinos and the drones and the robotics that we build actually is, in some ways, surprise to me, because I was a little bit of a naysayer. I'm a little bit old school when it comes to solving problems. I believe that, a good Leatherman, a knife, and a cell phone, and you can basically do anything. And so when people are like, no, we can actually use all these other pieces of technology, I always come at it very wary, because having been in those areas, you know that stuff breaks constantly. So I was worried about it, but turns out all of the tools and tech that we teach is actually super applicable to the disaster zones, the austere environments, the battlefields of our clients. And that even pertains to CEOs of corporations and academia who we teach, because if you can rapidly prototype something really quickly, even with duct tape and Arduinos and robotic parts, it might save you down the road investing a crap ton of money into something that will never go anywhere.
And for just pull Jerry into this for a sec, I'm reminded, I think when I was looking at the Building Momentum website, talks about, and Brad just brought up different audiences, right? And Ben Buskirk's organizations involved, but also there's community involvement. There are youth programs. So from a perspective of Alexandria, city of Alexandria, what's been that role of building momentum for the city?
Yeah, it's a very key role. In economic development, there are, to me, there are two key elements. One is workforce, available workforce, trained workforce, and the other is having those anchor catalyst institutions that are part of your organization. It could be a resource institution, could be a federal facility, but building momentum has become that anchor institution around innovation and technology.
And Ben, a question for you. So what is it about Brad's organization, Building Momentum, that was attractive for the Navy, for Naval X in particular?
Yeah, that's great. And no, I really love what this is going. So I will summarize what Brad's saying and what we find valuable as Naval X. And so our role, just for those that aren't familiar with it, is really how do we inspire and empower the naval R&D ecosystem to deliver faster and better. And we do that through guiding stakeholders to delivering capability, to being a platform for connecting naval needs and challenges with solution providers across the ecosystem. And third, to drive culture change. So that's just sort of a basic thing. And here's where building momentum, I think, is great, because innovation, what Brad is talking about, I learned this when I was a fellow from some folks out in Silicon Valley who ran a startup accelerator that said, innovation is, everyone tends to look at just the tools. It's mindset, skill set, and tool set. Is you have to teach people the right mindset to think differently. You have to give them the skills to use different tools. And what I love and what I think is incredibly valuable with our partnership with Building Momentum is that is what they provide. They will teach folks a new way of thinking, teach them the skills they need, and have the tools to build new things. And so in a nutshell, that's what I think Building Momentum really provides for us, and why they're a great partner in our vision and our mission of really how do we leverage the ecosystem, particularly in Alexandria and locally, to actually deliver capability faster, but also to teach our own people in the Navy how to think differently, teach them different skills, teach them and give them different tools so they can go back to their squadron or their lab or their systems command with a new way of doing business. And so all those are really good. And then, if I can say one thing for Jerry, I thought he brought up a great point. This is a great place to build an innovation ecosystem. MIT they have a course on ecosystem building, and it's like we have everything we need here. And I think Building Momentum is a key to that. But also key is having a supportive local government like we have in Alexandria. You have federal government, you have companies here, you have VC that's available. I mean, really, we have everything we need to really build this. And so it's really exciting to see where we're going, because it's all coming together, and with the support of administration.
Great.
Yeah, I was gonna pile on Alexandria as well, and then Ben took all my thunder.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And I was, I talk about this with some of my other small business friends, where they say, why should I come to Alexandria? Isn't Amazon there inflating home prices, inflating commercial prices, and all that stuff? And I say, not really. And for two, think about Silicon Valley, right? Silicon Valley is known for all of those same things, but people still flock there for the at least the perception of it's going to be this innovative environment where everyone around me is sort of feeling that same commonality. And Alexandria really is turning into that, and it's not necessarily entirely because of the tech. It's because of the city. It's because of the politicians. It's because of the programs. It's because the economic development team. It's those things, because I can pick up a phone and call any one of those groups here in Alexandria. I couldn't do that when I was in Silicon Valley. I didn't know those people. I didn't know who they were. It was so remote to me. But here I feel like we're friends. We go to cookouts, we hang out. So that's so important to a small business and to small business growth and success, where when you get hit with a pandemic, the city bends over backwards to keep you afloat. That is a thing that is valuable and worthwhile for the small businesses that are listening in. Think about it. That infrastructure really, really helps.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we'll turn to Jerry in a bit to get a little more detail about the role that AEDP plays in the city as well. I want to come back on a point that Ben had brought up. He talked about mindset, skill set, tool set, as apart from the technology piece itself. And on your site, Brad, you mentioned, you bring up the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And I won't go through them right now. Well, actually, I could list them, unless you'd like to list them. I have them here somewhere.
Yeah, it's no trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoid accountability, and sort of inattention to results.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how do you overcome those things, those 5 dysfunctions of a team within building momentum for your clients?
Yeah, and I like what Ben said about sort of the 3 pillars of innovation. What we believe, it's sort of to double down on that, is tools can be taught, right? I can teach. In fact, the tools of the 21st century don't require as much artistry as maybe they did a couple hundred years ago, where a blacksmith really is like an artist. Nowadays, it's a little less so. And so I feel like tools can be taught, but culture has to be believed, right? Culture has to be absorbed. And so to do that, to get the right mindset around these things, because here's the secret: the idea of the nascent seed of an idea of any technology, any procedural change, anything happens on a whiteboard with a bunch of people hanging around riffing on things, and you got to have that environment. So to do that here, one of our big key cornerstones of that is honesty, very honest feedback. We have a 24-hour rule here that if you say something that upsets me, if I'm annoyed by something you did, we're going to give each other feedback within 24 hours, or it will never be spoken of or felt of again. And we have to do that. We have to give that here's what you did. You're doing some things well. This is what you need to improve upon. And the open lines of communication, where I can be in a room and say, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling upset with you, but I'm not as sure why. So we're going to talk through some things, and then we're going to find out why we're upset with each other. Just even laying that groundwork is really important. We call it respectful rugby here sometimes, because when that whiteboard becomes this is the single greatest tool, I think, that we have, you have to have that respectful rugby. You have to be able to push and pull and tackle each other, and just get up and be dust yourself off and say, hey, okay, we're on the same team. Thank you for that. Thanks for the black eye. All right, we're going to move on. And I think the last thing that we do that we all have to believe in our hearts is we're always trying to solve for impact. We're trying to solve for what's best for our client, for the community, for the world, for humanity. Profit and revenue and all that stuff. Those are just symptoms of whether you're doing that well or you're doing that poorly. That's later. That comes downstream. But if you're solving for impact and actually making a difference in the world, that stuff will kind of figure itself out.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Ben, if we could dive into Actually, before I go to Ben, just on this technology front, Brad, you have these mobile labs, and I saw there was a mobile lab released in May or so, and I think heading for Japan or something. What's a mobile lab, and what do you do in a mobile lab?
Yeah, in fact, I was just showing it to Australia late last night. They have a Naval X like entity they're setting up, and it's still in its really infant stages. But I was given a tour of the lab, and I've built 20 something maker spaces. I've designed and or built something like 9 mobile labs, and the big secret is it's not that hard, right? It's a box. It's a box with tools in it. There are some clever things you need to do to make that box usable on an austere environment. So you need to do power the right way. Power is kind of tricky. You need to use the cleverness of the years of doing this. Like if you get rocketed and a big cement wall blocks the door, can you get out a different way? Kind of know that one from a little bit of experience. So we built the mobile lab to be more like, to involve some of those pieces of wisdom that we've had in the past. But what we really did, we solved for price. We made it the cheapest thing I could possibly make it. And so why is that? It's because when something costs $1 million, like the ones that the Marine Corps has right now, they're afraid to do anything with it. Every Marine is afraid to really push on that thing, to move it anywhere. But if it's only like 100, ours is like 170K. When it's that much, when it's just like, as much as a day at the range for a battalion, then you're okay cutting a hole in the wall. Then you're okay, I accidentally burned up a 3D printer. Okay, throw it in the trash, get a new one. And that is where true innovation happens, where you're kind of fearless about breaking tools, where you're fearless about punching a hole in a wall. Like that's why my entire shop is that way. We don't have super fancy glass walls. Well, we have a few, unfortunately, but mostly it's just like drywall that I don't mind punching holes in, because construction is cheap, but culture is hard. And I wanted to capture that with a mobile lab as well.
So sort of that fail fast mentality. If you're going to fail, do it.
I actually, so fail fast to me, I have a little pushback on that, because I think that when the DoD thinks about that, it's almost like a checklist. Like, get your failure out of the way, check. Okay, now what? And it's like, not everyone does that. I feel I've heard that, like those hints. I just say failure is a tool, like everything else. Just like honest feedback is the tool. Just like being vulnerable about your feelings is a tool. And just like a hammer and a 3D printer are a tool. So if you can use failure the right way, if you make something and it's a piece of crap and you're like, well, that's a piece of crap, and you're honest about it, and then you go, what do I need to do to make that better? That is a tool, and that is a very useful tool. If you just go, oh, I failed, I'm done, that thing sucks, I'll never be a good anything, well, then you didn't use that tool right. Or if you didn't recognize that it was a failure, which is actually the problem most people have, is they go, oh, it's still a great idea because it was my idea. So we also practice a lot of like, can you put down the good idea? Can you shoot the good idea in the head? So, because everyone wants to hold on to their good ideas so badly, and we have to like wrestle it out of their hands. So.
Ben, you at Naval X, you have a variety of other programs. Obviously, you're working with building momentum, but I noticed that there's the Tech Bridges program, and I found it curious. And can you tell us what is a Tech Bridge? What's the role of Tech Bridge for the Navy?
Yeah, sure. So Tech Bridges really were founded for 2 reasons. One is to develop local ecosystems, sort of like we've talked about before, is the fundamental question was, there's all this R&D going on in America. How come we're a small part of it in government? How do we better leverage and work with what's going on out there, the best that America has to offer? And we came to the realization that, we need to just be easier to work with. We need to provide at least a location in all these geographic regions where we can say, here, we're here for business. Come work with the Navy, even if you've never worked with us before. Like our office here in Alexandria, it is not like going to the Pentagon, right? I had multiple folks tell me that, the challenge is if you try to tell a small business with 4 people to go to the Pentagon, you're going to lose 85% of them right there. So how do we just be easier to access and talk to? So that's number one, is how do we get more people into the door, and how do we meet small businesses and large businesses that just aren't primes, at least halfway, and become easier to work with and more approachable. So that's the number one goal, is local ecosystem development, bring folks in, and then we can help guide folks and bring in these solutions that these companies have and try to align them with Navy problems. and then be that, that guide to help pull them together. And then the second is just within our own R&D. Navy R&D is huge. And go, so what are we doing internally? And are we talking to each other? And the Navy, and I say all DoDs, is bureaucratic and siloed. And so the second aspect is these tech bridges all talk to each other. And so we can break down silos internally to the government. So we can see, hey, what is this lab in Dahlgren doing compared to what this lab in Carderock's doing compared to what these guys over at, say Panama City are doing, or gals, and go, wow, we are working on 3 of the same things and we have 3 different companies. Why don't we sort of join forces? So that's the other reason. So both internal and external is the purpose of tech bridges. And then we're all linked up. And then what we're doing right now is going, right now they're solving local problems because these tech bridges are co-located with what we call warfare centers, which are labs. And if you go to our website, Naval X, you Google, it'll come up. You can see where these tech bridges are located, but they're co-located with our labs. And so those labs have their own problems that are funded by the Pentagon. And so they can get their foot in the door and see, hey, what are the solutions you need? And I'm in work right now with getting some of the biggest problems that the Navy faces to our tech bridges with a contracting authority with money behind it to go, all right, let's now get to the biggest problems we have and leverage everything America has to do that. So that's in a nutshell what tech bridges are about.
Can you share with us the nature of some of those problems just for the audience to sort of illustrate?
I will say I can go general right now, and I'll say right now the problems that are coming out. An example of the ones we did were a 5G living lab. So these are some the Southern California Tech Bridge. We're like, hey, from the local warfare center, we want to build a living lab. And so bottom line is they created, in partnership with local industry, industry and the lab working together, a 5G experimental lab, the first one ever made in the Navy in San Diego at Miramar. And a second example is during COVID-19, our Tech Bridge network came together and we're like, hey, both local, mostly helping local folks, were, hey, we need PPE, which is protective equipment, masks and so forth. How can we leverage everything we got to get more of this PPE in this national crisis? And they did. And our Northwest Tech Bridge led that one. That's out of Seattle. And they worked with the whole ecosystem with industry across the Tech Bridge network to deliver masks, particularly to the Pacific Northwest at the time that was hit hard. Those are a couple. Now, where do I want to take this? Are like big Navy problems, thinking long range fires, contested logistics. I'll call this C5ISR, command, control, communication, intelligence, surveillance, particularly in the world of unmanned. And I'm at discussions with the highest levels of the Navy to curate these problems. So I can then walk in and say, all right, guys, gals, I am looking for this problem to be solved. Let's go out to industry and see what we can get and get you into an experimentation space where we can very rapidly start iterating, like Brad said. It's all about failing fast. Some people don't like the way it turns. It's fearless experimentation with validated learning, a very lean startup idea. And that's what when we talk about changing the way we're thinking of the Navy, this is the discussions that we're looking to and to get some, really very soon, clear problem sets with a structure to move quickly that is much less daunting for non-traditional businesses to get involved in, because we love our primes, but at the same time, we're wholly missing out on other organizations like where this is all about with building momentum and the support of Alexandria government. We're bringing people into our ecosystem that are with me now because of this, that have never done business with the government before, and helping us get to where we need to be to get these problems curated and out to the ecosystem.
I'm actually going to get fearless experimentation tattooed on my arm. I love it.
I love it.
I love that term. And John, just to double down on that a little bit, the Navy, as they start adopting this, I think can look towards what COVID did with us as potentially as an example of what they can benefit from in the future. So when COVID hit us, all of our lines of business dried up. So we looked internally, and there were two solutions. There was furlough everybody and just weather the storm, or double down and treat this as a disaster. So I had a team that had tools, that had skills, that had the culture, and we had the passion to try to do things. And we developed 35 different technologies during COVID, of which some industry bought, some the city bought, that kept us going, some the government bought that kept us going. And we just pasted enough of that together to stay alive through the pandemic. Now, put that on a ship, right? We always talk about what happens with China or whatever, but like really abstract it. Like I just watched Independence Day again, kind of holds up still.
Yeah.
Will Smith is brilliant.
Yeah.
Imagine aliens, attack, and we're like in weird technologies we've never seen before. That's where just having those capabilities that can just start generating things out of nothingness is going to be super important for Ben's organization, the Navy writ large, and the DoD. And it starts with like what we just demonstrated. We have a shop, we have a bunch of empowered people, a lot of skills. Let's just go. And it totally kept us alive, at least.
I'm so fascinated by, and Jerry, just to bring you in from a community perspective, you guys must run across people who have a really good idea. They might be technically very competent, but then they just don't know anything else about testing or about getting into a live environment, and maturing technology or and being in an environment to really pressure test their idea. And if you're not part of one of the big integrators or a big corporation, you don't have that infrastructure around you, right? So there got to be a lot of people out there who just have a good idea. And do they go to Building Momentum? Do they go to Jerry? Do they go knocking on Ben's door?
I would say all the above. And I've heard the term ecosystem and culture repeatedly this morning, and it's so true. Alexandria has that ecosystem for a business to thrive. You can have a great idea, a good business idea, but be in the wrong location and just wither away. But when you're in a community like Alexandria, the resources are there. It could be Building Momentum, it could be AEDP, it could be Naval X, we're very fortunate to be co-located with the Small Business Development Center at AEDP that has a lot of resources under the SBA. It could be the new Virginia Tech Innovation Campus, which is under construction now. So it's sort of like I'm starting to get that feeling we're like a miniature Silicon Valley in Alexandria, where I remember the first time I went to Silicon Valley, I was like, wow, this feels like one big college campus with, and not just the campus itself, but everywhere you went, whether it was a bar or a restaurant, you saw people sitting around bouncing ideas off of each other. And one of the statements I remember from that very first visit was, people feeling like there were a lot of open doors for businesses. You could walk in and talk to a CEO with an idea and it would actually go somewhere. And I think that's what you're really starting to see here in Alexandria.
Yeah, I'll say one interesting thing about Alexandria too is when I was starting the company in my basement, this was me and one other person in my dingy, dank basement with like 3D printers I had built myself and everything because I didn't have any money. And I was like, I had enough like maybe stupidity to call the vice mayor up and be like, you know what you should do? You should come down to my basement here in Alexandria and see some crazy stuff. And most of the time they would just call the police, like which is probably the right call. He came down. The vice mayor came down to my basement. I was like, oh yeah, this could be a thing. And then Stephanie Landrum, who is the president of the economic development team, she came down to my basement. And so like when you have city officials doing that, when they are probably 15% convinced you're going to get murdered. So that is a huge leap of faith, I think, for Alexandria to put into small business. And it's a great anecdote for those looking to come here and think about that.
Well, I'm hoping you used that guitar behind you when they were in the basement.
They probably don't hope that.
Jerry, you mentioned Virginia Tech and its innovation campus. Can you tell us about that a bit?
Absolutely. So, we're kind of known now for the Amazon HQ2 project that's located in our neighboring jurisdiction, Arlington. Well, as part of that project and to attract Amazon, it was, again, what I mentioned earlier, workforce. Amazon was looking for an available workforce, but also the workforce of the future. So the state put a lot of money into education and workforce development programs. And part of that is the new Virginia Tech Innovation Campus. So it's going to be a $1.2 2 million square feet graduate and doctoral program campus at Potomac Yards, under construction right now. The first building, 300,000 square feet, should be open in October of 2024. Some of the key programs that they're looking at are around human-centered research, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, both augmented and virtual reality, cybersecurity and cyber physical security, data ethics, and autonomous vehicles, and the data around those autonomous vehicles. So it's again back to the ecosystem term. You know, we've got so many elements to support business and support this innovation economy in Alexandria, whether it be Building Momentum or Virginia Tech or Naval X or AEDP, that, you know, we're just poised for major success.
You know, Jerry, I wanted to also bring up you know, when I work with some of the other jurisdictions and their economic development offices, often they have, you know, they're prioritizing certain industries. Now, you know, Fairfax might want data centers, or I should say their geography makes them more amenable to a data center, right? Do you folks at AEDP have your own prioritization of industries you'd like to attract to the city?
That's a great question. And when I joined the team back in August of 2019, one of the first things we did was, you know, a quick and dirty SWOT analysis to see where our strengths were and, you know, what industries were where we were strong and we thought we had opportunities for growth. And, you know, we have 6, 7 kind of broad categories that we focus on. The largest is professional services. That's everything from marketing communications to architects and engineers, construction management, financial services, management account consulting. We have a large and growing venture capital and wealth management industry sector. Obviously, information technology, general technology, and cybersecurity is large. Federal government contracting, DoD, intelligence community contracting, large community, as well as nonprofits and associations, and then just kind of general business services and headquarters. The other growing industry is manufacturing. And when I say manufacturing, I'm not talking about a large car plant. I'm talking about very high skilled, high technology, but low production volume, prototyping type of situation. Could be 40, 50,000 square feet or less, you know, with less than 100 employees, but really leaning upon cutting edge technology and innovation.
I'm trying to imagine in my mind a small manufacturing facility. Maybe it's difficult to imagine. And actually, Brad, you made an interesting point, particularly for the entrepreneurs out there. You had this point when we were prepping about it's easy to make one thing or 1,000,000 things. It's not easy to make 1,000 things. Go ahead and elaborate on that, would you?
Yeah, and I've done this a bunch, right? So coming from sort of R&D world, even in the prototyping world, you can have a facility like, you know, smaller than ours to make 1 or 3 or 5 of something, because that's just like you grow it out of nothingness, you throw duct tape on it, you put some batteries in it, and you can do that 5 times. But then someone's like, well, I want to test a market. And if you need to make 500 of those or 1,000 of those, that is hard. If you want to make 1,000,000 of those, back to easy, right? Because then you solve the problem for the machines. You solve the how you do the injection molding and how you do the circuit board layouts and all. You solve that for speed and volume. But to do the 1,000 is really hard. And so it's actually something we're looking into. We have, and Jerry, is something we can talk later about too, is that we have some thoughts about how to set that up in Alexandria, actually not far from my facility here. But the way we're set up here too is some companies have done that. They've come in and made, you know, 10s or 30s or 50s of things here, because that's where you need like enough tools to grind it out, but not something you want to do in your basement. We have injection molders, we have CNC machines. It's just a weird thing. And so, you know, I dealt with this in Silicon Valley. I dealt with this doing other production. I've set up some other production facilities. in the past, and it's just 500, man, 1,000 that's just hard. That just sucks. And it's a lot of just like brute force in it.
I just want to remind the audience, we are taking questions. If you have questions, please don't be shy. Put them down there. You can be anonymous if you like. That's not a problem. I wanted to come back on the on this innovation point. I sort of want to ask the question, which is a loaded question, but what's the number one block to innovation? Meaning deterrence. Can you boil it down to one thing, the number one thing, or a couple that is a real deterrence to innovation?
I can, want me to start off? I mean, and I'll just say this, the number one, I know, what do most people say? Culture, culture. You know, I'll just be like completely direct on it. Lack of in-year budget flexibility. As in, it's just the nature of the way the Congress writes the budget, and the way it's done is it's planned out 2 years in advance, right? So right now in the Pentagon, they're working on the budget for 2023. So right now, somebody could walk into Building Momentum and be like, hey guys, I have the shark with laser beams that will defeat every enemy in the planet, and will become the superpower forever. And we can be like, great, I can get funding for that in 2 years. So I would say, you know, when it comes down to it, and this is as I do think from a government standpoint, and it is a constant thing that I'm discussing this at the highest level of the Navy, is how do we work with Congress to get flexible in your budget spending so we can do innovative work without it being like, you shall build this, but how about we want to try and work on this problem, and we're not really sure where it's going to go, right? Amazon started off selling books and turned to other things. And it's like, how do we, you know, if we want to match this model that works with industry, it's like, well, we need that flexibility. So I'll say that from the government standpoint, we're working very diligently to get that in-year funding flexibility so we can do innovative work. That's it for myself.
I didn't think, Ben, we were allowed to talk about the sharks with frickin' laser beams. So that was classified.
Now you did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my whole basement's about. I'll say the exact same thing from the other side of the fence, funding, right? To the example, before the pandemic, we had invented this like keg bot. It was a full up beer keg that bumped around a room at a cocktail party autonomously. And then when you wanted to pull a beer from it, you hit the stop button and a little timer would count down while you pull the beer, and then you would get off and go in again. When the pandemic hit, we were panicked, right? And the city gave us a $6,000 grant to help with COVID technologies. That $6,000, we invented this, we stripped down our keg bot and we added UVC lights to it. And we could now have this thing autonomously bump around our rooms and disinfect our spaces such that we felt a little bit safer coming to work to continue the next step. Then $6,000 doesn't sound like a ton of money. To me, at that moment, it was infinity money. And it was the capital I needed to just take a breath, to try something, and then to try the next thing, and then try the next thing, and try the next thing. And that's so, you know, on the small business side, if, you know, I actually hate money. I hate talking about money. I always think that's the last thing at the end of the day that I want to ever like deal with. But unfortunately, it is the fuel for small business innovation. It just is. There's no way to say it otherwise. We have to eat. We have to pay our mortgages. So that is the single greatest impediment. If I don't have any cash coming in, I can't innovate. And Alexandria, again, for another shameless plug, was really great about that. So they understand that.
Jerry, you want to take a try at the number one block? Do you agree with the other two folks about number one block with Ben and Brad?
I definitely agree with both of them, and I would add in, you know, two things that are equally important: fear and being in the right environment. I mentioned it earlier. There have been a lot of great ideas from folks through the years that just wither away because they're not in the right environment, and that's again what I believe. You know, Alexandria, and I'll be even the region. Has done. It's just kind of creating this ecosystem for businesses to thrive.
Can I just riff on that real quick? What I love what Jerry's saying, and what he said, really, I'm from Silicon Valley, born and raised, and I was back in Mountain View living there for a year, like I said, as a fellow before I came out here. And what I love is Jerry mentions this environment, and it just takes time to change it. But I do see this happening. And so that environment, when you walk down King Street, and you go into a coffee shop and people are up there talking about things. You can just, and you can just go in and hear a conversation and be like, hey, that's really interesting. Can I chat with you about that? That wasn't happening the first time I lived here in 2012, and I'm seeing that now. And when we get to that place where, anyone that's lived in Silicon Valley will say this, you go to a kid's birthday party and the moms and dads are talking, next thing you know, somebody's got a whiteboard out and we're solving the next problem. And I see that coming, and making that environment is just absolutely critical. And not just the fear of starting, but the fear of just going up and talking to somebody. So that's very counterculture to DC, right? Hey, I'm just going to go up and talk to somebody about my problems. And I think it's really, really great that we, just being right outside of DC, are changing that. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, I think in DC, it's more like the badge of honor, the jobs that you've held on to. And I feel like in Silicon Valley, it's the companies you've burned to the ground. Like, that's the badge of honor. It's like, oh, I had 4 failed startups. Like, I want to give you money. And it sounds ridiculous. Because
you had the guts, because you had the guts to try.
That's right. That's right. And that guts, at least back when I was there too, that was everything.
Are these the elements that, at the top of this program, I talked about the U.S. being #1 in innovation, which we all kind of know, right? But when you answer the question, why is the U.S. #1? China's throwing a heck of a lot of money at innovation right now, and that's relatively new. The Europeans put a fair amount of money. Is there something about our culture that just allows us to innovate faster?
I heard this argument. One of my friends told me this, is that actually one of the reasons the United States is pretty good at this is our bankruptcy laws are actually fairly generous. So I can burn a company to the ground and it's not going to ruin my life. I can file Chapter 11 or Chapter 7 and it's not going to ruin my life. Whereas in other countries, that may not be the case, right? You might have to go down with the entire ship. And I think I don't think we herald that enough sometimes. You hear, oh, they went out of business, they filed bankruptcy, and it's just like stain. Again, something in Silicon Valley doesn't see nearly as much of a stain as they do here. I think because of that, you can swing for the fences sometimes with an idea and go for it and just go all in. And that's the only way, I think, and when you're especially trying to cram into a new space or try to do something that no one's ever done before, you have to go all in. I mean, I leveraged everything against my house, like everything against my retirement. And so I had to go all in when I went all in. And the United States makes that a little bit safer, I think, than in other places.
Interesting. I was not expecting that to be your answer.
Yeah, me neither. It just came out.
It's very innovative. Just to round the corner here, running a little short on time. Brad, how do folks come and play with Building Momentum?
You mean how does someone engage with us?
Yes.
With an idea? You can shoot me an email. Walk right in. We have beer on tap. We have cold brew coffee. I don't say that even tongue in cheek, like literally just walk right in. You can shoot me an email, make an appointment, or I'm my chief creative officer. That's all he does, like all day, every day, is just meeting people, trying to find out how we can help. So it's really easy. We're right off the Van Dorn Metro. I'm looking out my window at it right now. You walk right over here. Come on in. Let's talk. I love meeting new friends.
And Ben, same question coming your way. Naval X.
Yeah, we have an agility inbox. If you go to our website, we're still reworking the website. That's one way. The other way is always LinkedIn. You feel free to reach out to me there, or post on the Naval X wall, or like you said, come into Building Momentum. I'm literally here. And we have a solid partnership. And so I love meeting folks when they come in, because really when especially the small businesses, because I get it all the time. How do we do more? How do we do more? And I will have conversations with folks that come in here on and I will share those at the highest levels of, hey, here's what I'm getting from folks. And we'll see if we can connect you with somewhere in the Navy where you can provide value and maybe make some deals. So like I said, walk in the door, either email, LinkedIn, walk in the door, talk to Building Momentum, and we'll connect.
And Jerry, you're always there with AEDP, looking to connect folks.
Absolutely. Same as Ben, LinkedIn, I'm an active LinkedIn user. Just reach out through there or email sanford@alexandriaecon.org, sanford@alexandriaecon.org. Best way to reach me. And you know, we see our part of our role is just as facilitators. So
Yeah.
we meet with, you know, hundreds of companies per year, and you know, part of it is just to learn more about those companies and how we can, you know, introduce those to different resources.
Well, this has been great, folks. I think we're out of time. Brad, I have a much better view of your basement now. If you can just get that keg robot guy working down there, the guitar, invite the mayor, the vice mayor. You know, you got to get Jerry in there too, and Ben as well. This webinar will be posted on the novaeda.org website effective tomorrow. So I'll get that done. And I want to thank this panel. I want to thank the audience for this really fantastic discussion. Keep innovating, everybody. All right. Take care, folks.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.
Thank you.